Hello, and thank you for joining me for the Ministry Pipeline Training Series. This video is all about church committees. Church committees are an essential part of our church. A large percentage of the ministry could not be accomplished without the work of faithful committees, ministry teams, church officers, volunteers, and church programs. In this training, we will discuss how to become an effective committee member and how our committees work together to advance the mission of the church. I want to invite you to take your copy of God's Word. Please join with me in Exodus 18. We're going to look at the biblical foundation for shared responsibility. We find a great example of that in Exodus chapter 18. This is the account of Moses and his father-in-law Jethro. Early in the chapter, his father-in-law Jethro is complimenting Moses for the work that God has done. The work has grown much bigger than Moses. His father-in-law offers some wonderful advice in chapter 18, verse 19. Now listen to me. I will give you some advice, and God be with you. You be the one to represent the people before God and bring their cases to him. Instruct them about the statutes and laws. Teach them the way to live and what they must do. But you should select from all the people able men, God-fearing, trustworthy, and hating dishonest profit. Place them over the people as commanders of thousands, hundreds, fifties, and tens. They should judge the people at all times, and then they can bring to you every major case, but judge every minor case themselves. In this way, you will lighten your load, and they will bear it with you. If you do this, and God so directs you, you will be able to endure, and also all these people will be able to go home satisfied. So verse 24 tells us Moses obeyed. He listened to his father-in-law's advice, and he did everything he said. What I want to encourage you from this passage of scripture is Moses was attempting to carry out the entire burden of leadership by himself. His father-in-law, Jethro, wisely instructed him to share responsibility with capable, God-fearing people. Because Moses listened, he delegated responsibility, and the work flourished. The simple lesson is this: the work of many goes much farther than the work of one. Our church follows that advice in a similar pattern. We have applied the same principle by utilizing committees, ministry teams, church officers, deacons, church staff, church programs to share responsibility and to accomplish the mission that God has given us. In this video, we're going to provide an overview of your role on our church committees, programs, serving as a church officer or deacon, and serving in the various capacities in which God has entrusted to each of us. Let's understand first the structure of our church. Before discussing committee work, we need to understand how our church functions. I believe that Dr. Adrian Rogers famously described it well when he said, Christ is the head of the church. The congregation is the governing body. The church is pastor-led, deacon-served, committee-operated, and congregational ruled. Let's talk about that. Christ is the head of the church. He's the boss. He's the chief. He establishes the New Testament pattern for the church. And this church seeks wisdom from Christ through prayer and through faithfully studying and reading his word. All leadership and ministry ultimately submit to the authority of Christ. Second, the pastor provides vision. The pastor serves as the under shepherd of the church. While he's not a dictator, he is responsible for casting vision, seeking God's direction, setting the pace, communicating clearly, delegating responsibility, and overseeing ministry execution. Without vision, the Old Testament reminds us people perish. God gives direction to the church through biblical leadership offices such as the pastor. The pastor helps communicate and implement that direction as he serves the church. The deacons. The deacons serve. They come alongside or right beside the pastor and congregation to serve and to support the ministry of the congregation. The congregation governs. Major decisions ultimately belong to the congregation, which serves as the governing democratic body under Christ. So committees have an incredible purpose. Committees carry out the vision. One of the most important truths that committee members would understand is this: committee members and committees are not responsible for creating the vision for the church. Their responsibility is to take the vision that God has given the church and the pastor and to help carry it forward. Committees, ministry teams, church officers, and programs should organize their work around the existing vision and direction of the church. This does not eliminate creativity. Rather, it streamlines creative focus. Committees still have freedom to set goals, organize activities, solve problems, improve ministry effectiveness. However, all of these efforts should support the direction that is already established. Could you imagine if every committee was responsible for creating their own vision. Well, in our church, we have roughly 26 or more committees and church programs and ministry teams. That would mean 26 or more different directions, 26 or more different visions. And then you multiply that by the number of opinions on each committee, by the number of individuals that make up those committees. You could have dozens, up to 80 or 100 different visions for the church. That would be confusing. It would cause priorities to be competed against. One of the great things about our committees is mission discipline. Effective committees remain mission focused. Rather than constantly asking this question, what should we do? What new program should we create? What do you guys think we should do as a committee? Committees should first ask, how can we support what is already happening? How can we strengthen the church's mission? How can we help other committees and programs succeed? How can we come right beside our pastor and staff? Mission discipline means staying focused on the mission of the church and the purpose of each meeting. There may be times that as a committee member, you will need to remind your committee to stay on track, not to get distracted by peripheral activities or discussions, but to kindly say to your chairperson and to your fellow committee members, let's think about mission focus. Chairperson, you were entertaining discussion on such and such item. Well, that should kindly and respectfully cue everyone. We need to stay focused. Third, let's build an effective committee. The committee chairperson serves as the organizer and the facilitator of that specific committee work. Each committee member should receive a committee notebook containing the church's bylaws, relative policies and procedures that pertain to that committee, a committee description for that committee from Article 6 of the church's bylaws, a copy of the current church budget, a copy of the church calendar, and a vision chart and annual goals that are already agreed upon in our church. Committee members should have a clear understanding of the church's vision, the committee's assignment, and the expectations for moving forward. Members should spend 2 to 4 hours preparing before each meeting. Committee chairpersons will be responsible for scheduling and reserving rooms for their committee meetings, ensuring an appropriate time and space for productive discussions. The chairperson should prepare an agenda before each meeting. First, scripture reading. The agenda should include prayer. Third, it should include approval of previous minutes. Fourth, a budget review for that specific committee line item. Fifth, unfinished business. And sixth, new business. When planning your church committee agenda, go ahead and consider the new items for business. Go ahead and place those on the agenda. And then anything that comes up during the discussion of that committee meeting can be tabled for the next meeting if that's the desire of the committee. Well-run committee meetings are streamlined, organized, and focused. As a chairperson, spend a few hours preparing for the meeting prior to the start of the meeting. Become familiar with the church calendar. Become familiar with the committee calendar. Become familiar with the denominational calendar and our community calendar. These will be helpful tools, providing you resources for preparing your committee meeting. I want to encourage you to plan around the church calendar. An effective chairperson does not arrive to the meeting asking this question, hey, what do you guys want to do this month? What do y'all think we should do over the next few months? Instead, the chairperson comes prepared. They should know the church calendar, the community calendar, the denominational calendar, and then as a committee, they should agree on those identified calendar items where the committee can support those efforts. For example, if our women's ministry union is going to have a conference like our ladies' tea, how can each of the committees in our church support that conference? What can our brotherhood do? How can our youth attend and serve? How can our children's ministry participate? Maybe by coloring place cards for the tables. What could the committees of our church do to support? How can our security team help? How could our church technologies team help? There are myriads of ways that each committee can pull together to support the work of other committees. And that's part of the shared responsibility in our church through committees. I want to encourage our chairpersons, especially our vice chairpersons, and any other committee members that would like to participate in church council. Every chair is expected to participate in church council meetings and call your meetings on the months when church council is not meeting. So if the church council meets on month A, then your committee should meet on month B. You should meet 4 to 6 times a year for your committee meetings. Let's talk about the role of the vice chairperson. While it's not required, a vice chairperson can be extremely helpful. it can be beneficial to that individual as well. Some of the responsibilities that they may share with the vice chair and the chair would include assisting the chairperson, monitoring the committee budget, attending church council when the chairperson is not able to be there, and simply by attending church council just to become familiar with the process of church council. The secretary is an incredible benefit to the committee. Church committees should have a secretary. These responsibilities include recording meeting minutes, documenting actions that are taken. You don't have to document every conversation or item that's discussed. However, it is important for the secretary to document the actions that are taken formally by the committee. Submit those minutes to the church office as soon as possible following your meeting, and then distribute those committee meeting minutes to all members of your committee. And that is done promptly. Rather than waiting for the next meeting, go ahead and send them out as soon as they're available for their review. So that way it keeps their mind fresh on what was discussed in the previous committee, and also it keeps them streamlined in their focus. Let's talk about expectations of committee members. Committee members are encouraged to be faithful in their regular church attendance. It's difficult to stay aligned with the church's life and mission if you aren't engaged firsthand. By being present, you'll understand the needs of the congregation and how your committee work will fit into the bigger picture of the church. Committee membership involves more than attendance. Members are expected to participate regularly. They're expected to prepare before meetings. They are expected to contribute to discussions within the meetings and to follow through on assignments. At times, circumstances beyond our control occur. And if circumstances prevent you from consistent participation, I would encourage you to prayerfully reconsider your commitment so that the church can place others in positions of service. Let's talk about the pastor's role. The pastor serves as an ex officio member of all committees. While he may not attend every meeting, he is always welcome. His presence should never be viewed as intrusive or intimidating. The pastor desires to be a resource, an encourager, and a supporter of committee work. Let's talk about planning and executing ministry. Each committee should establish an annual ministry calendar. This is done during the late summer months because our church calendar begins September 1st. And that calendar needs to be completed in a promptly manner so that it can be presented to the church council and then to the church in the month of August for final approval. This calendar should support the overall vision of the church. It should coordinate with church events, consider community and denominational opportunities, include the pre and post activity reports, and don't forget, on the reverse side of your activity report is a 6-month planning timeline to help you to know exactly how to plan your event effectively. Also included in that same pre-activity report is a list of goals. You'll read worship, fellowship, social, ministry, community service. There are several items that are included at the top. Your event must align with one of these values within our church. If it does not, well, quite frankly, it doesn't belong to the life of the church. And these are all taken from Acts chapter 2, verses 41 through 47, regarding the activities of the church. So make sure that your activity supports one of those goals and meets the criteria that's expected. I want to encourage you when you're planning your event to include a bulletin and communication request. Make sure that you include an excerpt. What would you like to be included in the bulletin? Describe your event in 2 to 3 sentences. Submit that to the church office for the church office to use when developing the weekly bulletin. Evangelism and outreach. Every committee should contribute to the church's mission. Committees should ask, how can we engage people with the gospel? How can we reach our community? How can we bring people into meaningful connection with the church? Committee work is ministry work. We work together. Strong committees look for ways to support one another. Again, for example, brotherhood helping with those ladies' events, youth serving during those events, children's ministry assisting with decorating by providing those handwritten place cards, security teams supporting the safety and security of those events, technology teams, nursery committee, personnel committees should also evaluate, is this event going to add a strain on our church staff? One of the ways that I'm seeing this right now in our church is the increased number of activities, not only on our church calendar, but those peripheral activities. Our church facilities are being used more and more, and we're grateful for that. But these activities are community events, personal activities, and we want to make sure that if our staff is expected to help support these peripheral events. We need to be mindful of that workload and ask, as a personnel committee, how can we assist our church staff by helping them with these events? Let's talk about some principles for effective committee work. Committees should remain focused. They should kindly, as members, help one another maintain mission discipline whenever conversations drift off course. They should follow orderly procedures. Our church has established that the Robert's Rules of Order is our guiding document if it is not superseded by our bylaws. Robert's Rules of Order principles include using an agenda, how to make motions properly, to vote when appropriate, and to table items when necessary. You're not asked to be a scholarly expert on Robert's Rules of Order. However, you should at least understand these items that I've just named so that you can help your committee work and run smoothly. Let's talk about sharing the work of a committee. Effective committees distribute responsibilities. Large projects can be divided among smaller groups or individuals so that no one carries the entire burden. When I think about this, I think about committees within that committee or teams within that committee. If you're working on a project, it doesn't necessarily require all committee members. You could assign that specific project to 2 to 3 members of the committee and another project to 2 to 3 other members of the committee. And that prevents overload and it allows a shared work responsibility. Members are encouraged to maintain a proper workload balance. I want to encourage you not to serve on more than 2 committees. And if you're chairing a committee, do not chair more than 1 committee. We want to encourage everyone to have a balanced workload, but also we want to create opportunities for others to join us in the work so that they can develop and hone their gifts and skills in the ministry. We want to encourage ministry leadership. A healthy guideline for encouraging healthy leadership is this: serve 3 years, rotate off a year, and then you'll become eligible again for re-election. This allows new leaders to develop, but it also prevents our church from depending on a single personality. Well, as we wrap up this video, committees should generally meet 4 to 6 times a year. Again, church council would meet on month A, and your committee would meet on month B. I want to encourage you, use that first Sunday of the month for your committee meetings. So for our church councils, we meet the first Sunday of the month on those alternating months. For your church committee should meet on the alternating first Sunday nights of the month. Again, chairpersons, make sure that you take the appropriate measures to the church office to reserve your room so that rooms are not double booked for committees expecting you to use the same room at the same time. Meetings should be limited to no more than 1 hour. To streamline the focus, have a prepared agenda, stay focused on the agenda, and get as much work done and accomplished in that 1 hour time frame. Meet in person when possible. There may be times and occasions when you will utilize Zoom or video conferencing measures when it's appropriate. That is encouraged, but make sure that you don't meet only through those measures. Make sure you meet as much as possible in person. There is nothing that can replace relational equity. We need to make sure that when we meet together, we are building relationships, and there's no greater way to do that than in person. And then pray regularly for your committee, for its ministry, and for our church. You have an opportunity as a committee member to have a front row seat to see what God is doing through your committee, through our church staff, and through our church accomplishments. Pray regularly for your committee members. Pray regularly for your chairperson. Pray regularly for your pastor and staff. Pray for our church to be effective in its ministry. So healthy committees help organize the church to accomplish more together than any one individual can accomplish alone. When committees understand the church's vision, stay mission focused, share responsibility, and work together, they become a powerful tool for advancing the gospel and strengthening the ministry of the church. The goal of committee work is not simply to hold meetings. The goal is to fulfill the mission that God has given to the church. Thank you for participating in today's video all about church committees. I look forward to seeing you next time on our church Ministry Pipeline Training Series.